Hello and welcome to using BI tools with MarkLogic from MarkLogic University. In this episode, we'll talk about using MicroStrategy with MarkLogic. To follow along with this tutorial, you'll need MarkLogic installed, access to MicroStrategy, and some data to work with. In this video, you will learn the basics about accessing data from MarkLogic using MicroStrategy. MarkLogic is great for doing data consolidation, bringing all sorts of data from a variety of silos and sources and putting it all under one roof, organized and managed in a highly secure environment. It's only natural that I now want to access that data to help drive my business. Whether I'm an analyst or an executive, I want to be able to ask or answer questions about my data in different ways. BI tools are a common way for enterprises to analyze their data. With BI tools, such as MicroStrategy, there are different ways of connecting based on your use case or business needs. How you select is going to be driven by your current IT setup and your use cases. If you need the ability to run live queries against the database, such as what is my financial exposure right now, then Odbc will probably be the best choice for you. The advantage of live is everything you see in your BI tool is up to date. On the other hand, your queries are hitting your production system and they are running at the speed of your database. What if you want to get a huge amount of data, but it doesn't need to be live, such as annual sales results? Data extract is probably your best choice. This allows you to programmatically batch and convert data, any data, to an optimized format. Using code like Java, you can certainly call SQL to get the data you want, but you don't need to. It could be a call to REST or some server-side code that extracts data from MarkLogic or leverages its powerful search capabilities. These results could then be saved in one or more files. You could also push data into a MicroStrategy cube, leveraging the MicroStrategy Push Data API. For the REST data connector, you write a front end using code that accepts parameters from the URL, pulls data from the database via a REST endpoint, and then returns the results. With the REST data connector, as with data extract, you are not restricted to just using SQL. You can make use of all of MarkLogic's features and functionalities, including full-text searching, semantics, and geospatial. If you decide that an Odbc connection is right for you, then you will need a SQL view over your MarkLogic data. One feature of MarkLogic that can help out is template-driven extraction, or TDE. It's very straightforward. First, identify the parts of your document data that you want to expose as SQL views. Next, write a template that specifies what that view looks like. A template is a document that declares how a view is to be populated. It defines a context, the root path of all the documents that are involved in this view. Then for each column in the view, it defines a column name, type, and a path to the data inside the document. With TDE, we are able to consolidate or manipulate data without changing the underlying documents. It also means we can use one or more sources to generate multiple views. You can learn more about MarkLogic at docs.marklogic.com. Further training on TDE and MarkLogic in general is available at marklogic.com/learn. Before we get into MicroStrategy itself, let's look at what has been done on the MarkLogic side. First off, we have a database created and populated with data. This database is being leveraged by two different app servers, an HTTP server and an Odbc server. With the content database selected, I'm going to hit the Explore button so we can see what we are dealing with. From the result, we can see that we have close to 75,000 documents in the database. Each of these documents is a simulated patient record for a hospital visit. While there is a fair amount of data in each document, we are only going to leverage a handful of values for our demonstration. This is the template that we are using to allow MarkLogic to create a SQL view for our documents. Notice the schema name is Healthcare. This is what the outside world will see as the SQL database, and the view name of Patients will be the table. This template has already been loaded into our schemas database. I'm going to run a simple SQL query to verify my data is available via SQL. And there is my data in its table. I've created a system DSN pointing to my Odbc server. Notice again that the database name lines up with the schema name. Here in MicroStrategy, let's start by creating a new dossier. We create a dataset for it by clicking the New Data button. For our first round, we will use our Odbc server, so click on Databases. If you knew exactly what you wanted to do, you could type in a query directly. Let's pretend we don't, so I'm going to build a query. Now click the plus button to add an Odbc data source. I have created a DSN, so I'll choose DSN data source. Now I'll choose my DSN, supply my credentials, and name the data source. Click on the healthcare data source, and you'll see the namespace appear below. Now our patients table is listed. I'll drag that into the box on the right, and it will show me the columns in the patients table. I'll double-click on Add All Columns to make them all available. The preview is populated, and now we can click Finish. This is where we can decide whether or not we want the data to be live data or just a snapshot. I'm going to have it cached. The initial visualization is a basic grid. I'm not going to use the visit date at the moment, but I'll place the patient ID, facility, and charges. That populates the grid. If I change the order, you can see it will group the rows for me. Now let's remove the patient ID. Now it's adding up all the charges for each facility. What if we wanted the average charge per patient? I can create a new metric that would calculate that for me. So I can set this to be called the average per patient. It will use the average function against our charges metric, and I want it to be calculated per facility. With my new metric created, I can add it to the grid. We can verify these results easily in the query console. Notice that the average for General Hospital is just under $13,000. Now let's run a SQL query that averages the charges specifically for General Hospital. Notice that the result here in the query console lines up with what MicroStrategy calculated. Next, let's import a static file into MicroStrategy. This file could take a number of forms, including a CSV or a JSON. I have a REST extension written that will return a JSON. For purposes of this demo, the extension is returning the same 4 columns as the Odbc view for all of the documents in our database. Now to save it so we can import it into MicroStrategy. Now we'll add a second page, this one to leverage that JSON doc. Next, we need to set up a new dataset based on our JSON. For this page, I'm going to set the visualization to heat map. For the grouping, I'm going to use facility, and for the size by, I'll use row count. I'm going to create an average charge metric like I did before to use for the coloring. Since I'm using an amount for my color, I want to change the settings from percentage and invert it so that the low cost is green and the higher cost is red. We now have a nice visualization that communicates clearly the relationship between the facility types, both in the quantity of patients and the average cost per patient. If I wanted to, I can actually use that same JSON data without downloading it first. Let's try that out. We'll start with a new page again. And now to add our new data set. This time it will be data from URL. I can paste the URL I had in my browser into MicroStrategy so it knows where my data is. Since my app server is requiring authentication, I can't leave the connection as anonymous. I need to create a new connection. I'll enter the credentials from my system and name the connection. Now I can choose it from the drop-down and add my dataset. For our last visualization, let's use a pie chart. For the slice, I'll use the facility, but for the angle, I want to use something a bit more creative. I want to show the number of patients paying 80% more than the average. So to start, let's find the average per patient again. Now to see who paid 80% more than that. We'll do an if statement this time, comparing the charge for the patient to 180% of the patient average. Now to tally up the number of high payers per facility. And lastly, we'll calculate what percentage of each facility is a high payer. Now with all our data points created, we can populate our pie chart. If you mouse over each of the slices, you can see the details for each slice. If you right-click, you can turn on labels and make other adjustments. And there we have 3 different methods of leveraging and visualizing the same stack of data. In this episode, you learn the basics about accessing data from MarkLogic using MicroStrategy. To get MarkLogic, download it from developer.marklogic.com. Get more training by visiting marklogic.com/learn. Also, a complete selection of on-demand topics is available at mlu.marklogic.com/on-demand. Or download the MarkLogic mobile app available on both the Apple App Store and Google Play. And don't forget to show off what you've learned. Add MarkLogic as a skill on your LinkedIn profile today. Thank you for watching this MarkLogic University on-demand tutorial.